Marsh Pod. We are back. We're recording this on a Sunday afternoon. We are talking a little bit of SWBA to close out. We're going to start with SimWorld U. 3 weeks into the regular season, we now have 3 different number 1 overall seeds. Miami starts it. They lose. Tennessee gets to number 1. They lose. And then now Kentucky is the latest number 1 seed. No one is safe, essentially, at this point, and we're going to see if that trend of the number 1 team in the country losing continues, as Kentucky has a game on the 23rd, as well as one next week on the 29th. So there's a chance that we come back next Monday and we've got a new number 1 team in the country. I think that's probably going to be par for the course for this early part, but I also think that we're starting to see a line in the sand as the SP Top 25 has maybe kind of figured itself out a little, not figured itself out, but maybe some consistency where I think the top 5 teams are in a tier of their own. Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, Gonzaga, and Duke are the top 5 teams in the country. I think that is... Once you get behind them, and I think UCLA and Miami, who are 6 and 7, have a chance to move up into that tier. But right now, I think those 5 teams are at a different level. They are, if you're doing a short list, obviously the top 5 teams in the country are going to be the teams you put there. But they are playing at a much different level, and they have some of the things that these teams below them don't have. Kentucky has a star. They have 2 stars. They've got depth. Tennessee, 2 stars with depth. Alabama, they have 1 star who might not be on the same quite level as what Kentucky and Tennessee have in DJ Childs, but they've got depth. Gonzaga, Caden Shipp has looked fantastic through the first 4 games. And then Duke with Cooper Flagg, and then their shooting depth. When you look behind them, UCLA, Miami, maybe their stars aren't quite as high up as the guys in front of them. Houston, same thing. They have maybe the most depth in the league, but they don't have the star power at the top of it. North Carolina, UConn, in that same breath. That, to me, is what's going to separate these 5. And I think we're probably going to see a rotation of these top 5 teams between who's number 1 and who's not. What's going to be interesting and I think is worth watching is does the SP keep on valuing recent wins and losses over the larger picture, right? If Kentucky loses, do we really, and let's say Alabama loses and Gonzaga loses, let's put them all at the same 1 loss. Do we really think that it changes necessarily? Heck, if Kentucky loses, Alabama, Gonzaga, Duke, or Alabama and Gonzaga remain undefeated, do we have to put one of them at number 1 just because they're undefeated? This early kind of changing up of who's the number 1 seed is going to be consistent, I think, but I think we also need to take a moment and start to take the bigger picture, right? Because we're going to get, over the next couple weeks, a lot of teams playing one another and coming out on top. For example, Illinois, who just got smoked by Missouri. Well, they lost to Missouri big time, and Missouri now steps into the top 25 and Illinois loses. But they have common opponents that you look at and say, well, Illinois lost to this team, and they're ranked, and that team is ranked in the top 25, so shouldn't that mean they're there? I think the same argument is going to exist in the top 5, where we're going to see, obviously, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Alabama play one another. Will one win in those games, let's say they beat one another, Kentucky beats Tennessee, Tennessee beats Alabama, Alabama beats Kentucky, we're going to have to eventually at some point just kind of say it's not the 1 game sample size that determines who's the number 1 team in the country, but rather the bigger picture. What these 5 teams are doing right now, I think all of them are deserving of the number 1 spot. The reason you don't put Tennessee and Duke on theirs, they have a loss. The reason you don't put Alabama and Gonzaga on theirs, they don't have a massive win. Kentucky has that. They're going to get tested in these coming weeks. For example, we've got a massive game on Tuesday when Duke and Alabama face off in Tuscaloosa at 8:30. That's going to be a big matchup. You've got Texas and UConn, 12 and 10 in Connecticut. That's going to be a big matchup. So there's going to be these examples for us to say these 2 teams played head-to-head. But we need to, at the same time, take those into account while also the bigger picture. But right now, as it sits here, the top 5 teams in the country, I think, are head and shoulders above the rest of the crop. There's teams down there that can catch up. I think the more that we see from Maryland is going to be indicative of what they are. The more we see of Iowa, I think, could be a team that moves up. They're currently number 16. Mississippi State gets into the top 25 for the first time at number 19. The more we see of them, we're going to figure out, is this a team that just beat Rutgers? They just went on the road and beat, I think it was Kansas. If they keep doing this, do we have to now put them into a higher rank? But again, you've got 2 losses. So where do we value the wins and losses is going to be interesting when it comes to the top 5 and the number 1 seeds, because that ultimately is going to be our top seeds when it comes to the conference. Then thinking really long term, will the selection committee be willing to have Kentucky, Tennessee, and Alabama, all 3 of them, as number 1 overall seeds come the postseason, even though 2 of them, and maybe all 3, aren't going to win the SEC? I think that's going to be fascinating to keep an eye on. But as we sit currently, 1 through 5, I think makes sense. But I think we're going to see a lot of jockeying over the next couple weeks and throughout the season with who's number 1, using, unfortunately, a lot of recency bias in terms of, well, they just lost, so maybe they can't be the number 1 team anymore, even if that doesn't necessarily mean they're not the number 1 team in the country. Moving to SWBA, we're tipping off. First game of the regular season. The whole regular season starts October 22nd, and there's one thing that I continue to see brought up time and time again, and I find it fascinating. Last season, we had huge game played numbers by stars who had traditionally been not always filling up the game sheets, right? You have LeBron James and Anthony Davis each playing into more than 70 games. You had an active Kawhi Leonard and an active Paul George. You had Joel Embiid playing a lot. You had all of these star players. Well, Embiid playing a fair amount. You have all of these star players trying to surpass that 65-game threshold, which, by the way, last season was the first season that this was implemented. And now we walk into this regular season and we say, well, there's no way that Kevin Durant's going to play all these games. There's no way that LeBron and AD are going to have these healthy of seasons again. And my question is, maybe they've always had these healthy of seasons. Obviously, injuries occur in sports and guys are going to end up missing games. That's fine. That's to be expected. But we keep looking at last season and saying, I can't believe player X played 70 games. There's no way he's going to be that healthy. I kind of wonder if they've always been that healthy and they've chosen not to play. And the rules implemented to force players to play at least 65 games of the regular season did a great number in promoting players to play. When they would have missed 2 weeks with an injury, now they play through it. Am I advocating to play through a terribly sprained ankle or a strained hamstring as Tyrese Halliburton did? No. But we are so caught up in look how many guys played so many games last season. There's no way that can be happening again. And while that may be true, I think we are completely ignoring the fact that last season was the first time players were forced to actually play more. And it's no coincidence in my eyes that we saw a huge number of players actually surpass a number that they previously hadn't hit in the last 4 to 5 years. It wasn't a matter of somebody suddenly being healthy so much as it was a player actually having the responsibility to play in regular season games. This is great for the guys that are trying to earn a supermax. My question on all of this is, eventually these guys are going to play the requisite number of games that they need to play, potentially make an all SWBA team, and then from there they are going to sign a supermax contract and forget about trade requests. Now the incentive for them stops having to be playing 65 games. And we've already seen it with Joel Embiid. He wins his MVP, and now he says, I'm not playing back-to-back games. He's almost guaranteed to not play 65 games and not be eligible for any postseason recognition. But that's fine. You want to know why? Because he already signed his contract. So I'll be very curious to see how in the coming seasons, how does the SWBA and the Players Association ensure that the requirement to play 65 games still holds value for these players? Because we are going to have guys like Joel Embiid that say, why do I, if I've already signed a Supermax contract, I have hit these requirements, why do I need to become an all-SWBA player? Why do I need to win an MVP award? I can just not play 65 games and be fine because my legacy, my career, my impact has already been established. That motivation is quickly going to leave once a guy hits that. And I'll be curious to see how the league fights that. But at the same time, as I said, I am not surprised that guys played 70-plus games last season because they were incentivized to do so. I don't think that we will be, or it shouldn't be as surprising as it is today, that these guys had healthy seasons last season and to expect them to do it again, because modern medicine tells us that it's very easy to return from injuries and to maintain and prevent against them. We could see it all over again, and people are again going to be surprised, but I think the reason for all these games being played is right in front of us, and it's the mandate the league made. All right, EM giveaway time. Last week, we had a record number of submissions, so appreciate everybody that commented there. We're going to keep doing 3 winners. This one, we can't give it to everybody, so that's a great end result. So maybe the days of easy EMs might be gone for y'all. But we're doing 3 giveaways, so our 3 winners from last week, randomly done from those 8. Justin Zhang, Wade Rose, CJ Green. Congratulations to the 3 of you. 1,000 EMs should be coming your way. If for whatever reason you win and you don't see the EMs come to you, just let me know. Put it in the chat. Hit me up privately, and we will make sure that the EMs go to you. This time, we're going to do, with the SWBA season starting on Tuesday, very simple one. You're going to put in the number 75. It is not the 75th season. I think it's 76, but that's just an easier number. Let's do 75, and then put in the 2 teams that you think are going to be in the SWBA finals come June. So 75 and the 2 teams in the SWBA finals. We'll do it again. Again, more people that get in there, the better, but 8 last week. Hope let's see if we can break that number, but 3 giveaways go to Justin Zhang, Wade Rose, CJ Green for this past week, and then 75 and who you think are going to be in the SWBA finals. 2 teams. We'll check you out then. Talk to you on Monday.